Hello and welcome back to the channel. For today's video I'm going to be talking about why I think Criston Cole may be the worst Kingsguard in A Song of Ice and Fire history. I will be basing my kind of thoughts and opinions on this based off of House of the Dragon, not Fire and Blood, as House of the Dragon does go a little bit more in depth around Criston Cole and Fire and Blood is deliberately dubious in its nature. And again, as a kind of warning, I will be discussing Season 2, Episode 1 and 2 of House of the Dragon in this video, which have both released recently, so if you've not watched them, now's your sign to probably get out. But without further ado, let's get into the video. First things first, what are the vows and duties of the Kingsguard? Now, the vows are a little bit of a grey area as they're never explicitly outlined in the books. Whenever we have a character talk about the Kingsguard, we can get a pretty clear idea as to what those vows are. However, again, not explicitly defined. However, in the show, Sir Eric does give a rendition.
I swear to ward the Queen with all my strength, and give my blood for hers. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall guard her secret, obey her commands, ride at her side and defend her name and honour.
These being the supposed vows of the Kingsguard, and they do seem pretty accurate considering that Visenya Targaryens supposedly modelled them off of the Night's Watch when creating the Kingsguard, so I think we can give a pretty good amount of credence to what Sir Eric said. The duties of the Kingsguard are more or less self-explanatory, with the main one obviously being to protect the king from all harm. It's kind of in the name, Kingsguard. Didn't really need me to spell that one out. In House of the Dragon, it does seem that protection does extend by default to the Queen and the royal family. In the books, I don't think it's necessarily clear that that is the case by default. I think it's more or less the king can just choose to extend that protection to his family. But in House of the Dragon, in my opinion at least, it is pretty damn clear that Viserys does get his Kingsguard to protect the whole of his family.
You swore oaths to protect and defend my blood!
Also in House of the Dragon, and again this doesn't seem to be the case in the books, the Kingsguard can be sworn protectors to a member of the royal family, as Criston Cole is sworn to Rhaenyra, kind of, and then also sworn to Queen Alicent, and then Alicent as she's the Dowager Queen. So again, I will be going forward assuming that sworn swords are a thing that happen in the Kingsguard, as well as the Kingsguard are supposed to be protecting the whole of the royal family by default. Now that I've explained the general premise of the Kingsguard, I'm going to go through each reason why I think Criston may well be the worst. Don't worry, there's multiple reasons because I genuinely have a disdain for this character. The first thing I want to bring up is the Oath of Celibacy, and Criston breaks this numerous times, both with Rhaenyra Targaryen and Alicent Hightower. Now, during the first instance with Rhaenyra, after Alicent confronts him, he says if Alicent is feeling merciful, that he should only be executed and not gelded, which suggests that letting him off completely scot-free is more than just a nicety here. And I honestly believe as well that this happened numerous times with Criston and Rhaenyra, given the whole
You want me to be your whore?
That would suggest to me that this happened numerous times and Criston was expecting on Rhaenyra to call upon him had they have gone on with their arrangement. However, as we know, they choose not to. Now, of course, later in the season, in the beginning of Season 2 of House of the Dragon, we see that Criston and Alicent have taken up a bit of a fling, which is a little bit ironic based on the whole sense of honour and decency. However, again, this is further breaking Criston's oath of celibacy and, again, further dishonouring him and, as they would put it in A Song of Ice and Fire, soiling his white cloak. And you could also make arguments that potentially this affair going on during the Oaths of Blood and Cheese led to the event of Prince Jaehaerys' decapitation being a little bit easier, as the Kingsguard that was probably supposed to be having a look and keeping the floor secure was busy with Alicent Hightower instead. The next thing I want to draw your attention to is the murder of two innocent men, these being Sir Joffrey Lonmouth and Lord Lyman Beesbury. Now, with Lord Beesbury, I think there is the suggestion that it could have been accidental, as the way that Criston did kill him was it didn't look like he was trying to kill him, essentially. However, inadvertently still killed a member of the small council, and again walks away with absolutely no repercussions, and shortly after the fact is made Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, which really makes sense. And then with just Sir Joffrey Lonmouth, I think this is probably the worst of the two, as he beats Joffrey Lonmouth to death for absolutely no reason. Now, there is a slight verbal altercation between the two, sure. However, Joffrey Lonmouth has not proved to be a threat towards the king, nor any member of the royal family, yet Criston still deems it necessary to beat him to death publicly. Now, sure, you can argue that the Kingsguard vows don't necessarily say anything about taking innocent lives. However, the knighthood vows do. They say about protecting the innocent, which Criston most certainly does not do in either of these two instances, so I think this is yet again a further reason why he is not a great member of the Kingsguard. Thirdly, you've got downright negligence. Now, this happens on multiple instances, but the one I want to focus on is the part blinding of Aemond Targaryen. Now, during these whole events where Criston supposedly is given the Night's Watch by his Lord Commander, he allows Aemond to sneak out of the castle unaccompanied and claim a dragon, which is definitely not a dangerous thing to do. Upon his return, two other princes, Jacaerys and Lucerys, are both there to kind of confront him when he returns with Baelor and Rhaena. Again, Criston Cole seems unaware of their movements, which seems kind of stupid considering he's supposed to be protecting the royal family, and allows them to start a fight in which Aemond loses an eye, and it's actually the Lord Commander that intervenes, the one that gave Criston the Night's Watch to begin with, so he's supposed to be sleeping. Criston Cole is supposed to be doing this job, and just fails. Aemond gets blinded, and Criston's defense is,
God, I've never had to defend princes from princes.
That is no answer!
and no repercussions are done, which is another instance of I just don't understand how he's stayed in the Kingsguard, which is just ridiculous. And then you could technically say that during the events of Blood and Cheese, him choosing to break his oath of celibacy yet again with Alicent could be construed as negligence towards protecting the Prince Jaehaerys against Blood and Cheese, although I would argue that one is a lot more theoretical, as there's not really any kind of hard evidence to back that up. Although, supposedly, Ser Aric says to Criston, well, you're supposed to be guarding the Queen, so I would argue there is definitely something there to suggest negligence, however, it's a little bit kind of more theory-based. Finally, defiance and downright treason. Now, the act of defiance happens straight after the death of Lord Beesbury, where he's asked to throw down his white cloak by his Lord Commander, and instead goes, I'm going to draw my sword on him instead. Now, if that happened in the Night's Watch, I think it's pretty clear to say that he would have gotten hanged as a traitor. Now, in the Kingsguard, what happens to Criston Cole? Absolutely nothing. In fact, when that Lord Commander eventually steps down, he ascends as Lord Commander, so I don't quite understand how that happened. Now, the act of treason is crowning a usurper when his king, who had just died, definitely did not wish that to be the case. Now, you could make an argument here saying, well, Alicent said to everyone at the small council that, you know, on his deathbed, Viserys changed his mind and wished for Aegon. Now, we know that's not true. However, again, the small council doesn't necessarily have any reason to doubt Alicent's testimony. However, I do think that Criston would have done it regardless of Alicent saying that or not, just for his spite for Rhaenyra, so I think treason is another reason you can add to the very, very long list. And those are my reasons for why I think Criston Cole may well be the worst of the Kingsguard, but thank you all very, very much for watching. That will be all for today's video. As a brief disclaimer, I do want to say any dislike that I've voiced towards Criston Cole in this video does not extend towards the actor Fabian Frankel. I think they're doing a phenomenal job in this role, and I think the reason that I dislike Criston Cole so much is how good of a job they've been doing portraying them as being dislikable. And I think that any kind of negativity being hurtled towards the actor is pretty unacceptable and more or less just toxic in that case, as the actor has had to go to the extent of limiting his social media interactions because of it. So absolutely no hate towards Fabian Frankel. But again, that will be all for today's video. If you did enjoy it, please be sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment if you disagreed with me as well. I'm really interested to hear a kind of broad range of House of the Dragon fans' opinions of what I've been saying, because again, that's one of the most wonderful things about this fandom, is that it can be subjective. We can have different views on characters, so please be sure to say if you agree with me or disagree with me. I want to hear it. But yeah, again, for the millionth time, that will be all for today's video. Thank you all very, very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.